Echoes of the void. It started with the stars. Or rather, the way they disappeared. Not all at once, mind you. That might have been explainable, some colossal supernova chain reaction, maybe a shroud of cosmic dust smothering our view. But this wasn't that. This was something far stranger and infinitely more unsettling. The first star went missing on an unremarkable Tuesday night. A faint in the Ursa Major constellation, barely visible to the naked eye, winked out like a bulb succumbing to the void. Amateur astronomers noticed first, their observations filling forums with questions about faint dots disappearing from familiar constellations. Soon, professional astronomers corroborated their claims, detecting the anomalies with higher precision. They used time-lapse imagery and spectral data to confirm that the stars hadn't dimmed or shifted but had simply vanished, leaving behind an unexplainable void. The reports dripped into the news cycle with the frequency of background static. Scientists reassured the public that stars burn out all the time, that it was nothing unusual. And yet, behind closed doors, those same scientists began to panic. Because 2 nights later, another star vanished. Then 3 more the next week. By the end of the month, a dozen stars were gone. Not burned out, not obscured, gone. My name is Daniel Holt. I'm an archivist for the New Haven Observatory, a quiet job that mostly involves cataloging old data and digitizing fragile star maps. My office is a windowless room on the basement level, with walls lined by dusty shelves and a single humming computer terminal. The air is perpetually cool, carrying the faint metallic tang of old equipment and the mustiness of paper that's spent too long in storage. It smells of ozone and mildew, a combination that's both unpleasant and oddly comforting. The overhead lights flicker occasionally, their dim glow barely cutting through the gloom. It's the sort of job you take if you're looking to disappear, and I was. My brother used to joke that I was a ghost of a person even while I was alive. I first heard about the missing stars from Dr. Reinhardt, one of the senior astronomers. He'd been pacing in the observatory's cafeteria, clutching a coffee cup like it was the last thing tethering him to the earth. It's systematic, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. There's no way this is random. Too many at once, too close together. I asked him what he meant. He blinked at me like he'd forgotten I was there. Stars, he said. Something's happening to them. His hands trembled as he dug a tablet out of his bag, pulling up a star map that glowed faintly blue. These are the missing stars, he explained, pointing at the black voids peppered across the screen. Notice anything? I didn't, not at first. But as I stared at the map, the absences seemed to arrange themselves into something, a shape. No, a pattern. It wasn't static, it was growing, expanding outward in some kind of spiral. The pattern felt deliberate, almost mathematical, as though it were inscribed by some ancient hand. Was it a natural phenomenon or an intentional signal? The question hung heavy in my mind, each possibility more unsettling than the last. Dr. Reinhardt must have seen the recognition on my face, because he nodded grimly. I've sent this to every colleague I trust, he said. Most dismissed it. A few, well, they're as terrified as I am. That night, I stayed late at the observatory. The building was quiet after hours, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums and makes you hyper-aware of every breath. My workstation flickered faintly in the darkness, displaying the star map Dr. Reinhardt had shared. I zoomed in, panning over the affected regions. Something about the pattern felt wrong, as though it was alive, pulsating beneath the surface. The longer I looked, the more a sense of dread coiled in my gut, ancient and primal. And then, for a fraction of a second, the screen blinked. The map's faint glow was replaced by something else. A texture, like the grain of aged film or the static of an untuned television. But in that static, I saw shapes. Tendrils, impossibly long and thin, unfurling into the void. They reached outward, grasping, Groping, I jerked back, knocking my chair over. By the time I scrambled to my feet, the map was back, perfectly normal. I told myself it was a glitch. Stress. Too much caffeine. But the explanation felt hollow, like a fragile thread trying to hold back a flood. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. A deep, visceral fear churned in my chest, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your thoughts scatter like leaves in a storm. But I didn't sleep that night, and by morning, I had decided to dig deeper. The thing about archival work is that it teaches you how to notice patterns, the way documents cross-reference each other, the gaps in the record where something should be. Over the next several days, I pored over decades of observational data, looking for any anomaly that might explain what was happening. And I found something. In 1974, the observatory recorded an event listed only as Incident Aegis. There were no details in the digital archive, just a brief note that the hard copy files were classified. It took me 3 hours to locate the physical folder, buried in a cabinet marked restricted. Inside, I found yellowing papers, handwritten notes, and a grainy photograph of what appeared to be a telescope's lens. The lens was cracked, its surface spiderwebbed with fractures. Scrawled across the bottom of the photo was a single word, threshold. The notes were worse. They described an object in space, something vast and dark that defied categorization. It seemed to absorb light itself, creating an absence so profound that it was more than mere darkness, it was a negation, a hole in reality. Instruments recorded no radiation, no gravitational influence, as if the thing didn't exist within the same physical laws. And yet, its presence was undeniable, a gnawing, suffocating sensation that seemed to radiate through the reports, infecting even the words on the page. It wasn't a planet, wasn't a star, wasn't anything that fit our understanding of the universe. The researchers had called it the blind spot because telescopes couldn't focus on it. Instruments malfunctioned. Data became corrupted. And the people who studied it too long reported changes. Nightmares, paranoia, sudden fits of aphasia. One of the astronomers, a Dr. Lewis, had been institutionalized after attempting to gouge out his own eyes. What chilled me most was the final page of the report. It wasn't written by any of the researchers, it was a transcript, copied verbatim from a radio signal intercepted in the vicinity of the blind spot. The signal repeated the same phrase over and over in a deep, sonorous tone. We are hunger. We are history. We are the last sound you will ever hear. I didn't tell Dr. Reinhardt what I'd found. He already looked as if he hadn't slept in days, his face gaunt and his eyes ringed with dark circles. Instead, I kept the folder in my bag, taking it home to study further. But no amount of reading could prepare me for what happened next. 2 nights ago, another star vanished. Only this time, it wasn't a distant point of light. It was Vega, the 5th brightest star in the night sky, visible even in the most light-polluted cities. People noticed. It was as though the sky itself had betrayed us. News anchors stammered through breaking reports, while conspiracy theorists flooded the airwaves and social media with increasingly outlandish explanations. Religious groups claimed it was a sign of the apocalypse, and some even gathered for public prayers beneath the dimming heavens. In online forums, amateur astronomers shared frantic updates, their posts tinged with equal parts fascination and dread. The world watched the void where Vega had been and waited, holding its collective breath for whatever would come next. And then the dreams began. I've always been a lucid dreamer, able to steer my subconscious like a ship through calm waters. But these dreams were different. They weren't mine. I'd wake up gasping, choking on the memory of vast, incomprehensible things shifting in the dark. I saw landscapes that defied logic, mountains that spiraled upward into infinity, oceans that churned with a blackness deeper than night, and skies where constellations writhed like living things. The air carried sounds that didn't belong, whispers in forgotten languages, the distant roar of something vast and unrelenting. And always, there was a sense of being watched, as though the dream itself were a conscious entity, observing me with malevolent curiosity. Their forms were ever-changing, their presence overwhelming. And always, I heard the same voice. Look closer. I've stopped sleeping now. Stopped eating, too. The hunger gnaws at my insides, but it's a small thing compared to the weight of the voice, the weight of knowing. Something is coming. Something ancient and unstoppable, unraveling the universe one star at a time. Tonight, I return to the observatory, driven by a compulsion I can't explain. The halls were silent, the air heavy with static. In the main observation room, I found Dr. Reinhardt staring through the telescope, his face pale and expressionless. When I called his name, he didn't respond. As he stepped aside, I noticed his hands trembling, his fingers twitching as though they sought to grip something solid in the void. His lips moved faintly, mouthing words I couldn't hear. His eyes, bloodshot and sunken, had a distant, hollow look, like a man who had glimpsed something beyond human comprehension and barely survived the encounter. I hesitated, wanting to call out to him, but something in his demeanor held me back, a silent warning radiating from his very presence. And I did. I saw the stars. Or rather, the absence of them. A vast swath of the sky was empty, a darkness deeper than anything I'd ever seen. And in that darkness, something moved. It wasn't the tendrils I'd seen before. It was bigger now, more defined. I couldn't grasp its shape, but I felt its presence, its malice. The voice came again, louder this time. Look closer. I couldn't help myself. I adjusted the focus, zooming in on the void. And as I did, I realized the stars weren't gone. They were inside it, consumed by its vast, churning form. Their light flickered faintly within its depths, like fireflies trapped in amber. I don't know how long I stared. Long enough for the voice to speak once more, its tone final and absolute. We are coming.